Hi everyone, Daljeet Peterson here from astrolab21.com, and in this video we're going to be talking about Virgo season 2021. But before we jump into Virgo season proper, thought we'd do just a little bit of a recap of what we've experienced here during Leo season, which is just coming to an end. In last month's video, we talked about how we had the Sun and Mercury moving together through the sign of Leo in a pretty tight conjunction and forming a exact opposition with Saturn in Aquarius. We talked about how that tension was likely to play out, because here you have this Leo energy, this just expressive, individualistic energy that wants to give voice to its individual expression, Sun, Mercury, Leo, but getting resistance from this limiting, restricting Saturn in Aquarius, these social limits and restrictions. And we could see that tension that was ready to play out, and we were getting a square from Uranus to that position, almost a T-square, not very exact, but that Uranian energy trying to work its way into the mix, either siding with the people who were more individualistically expressive versus the social structure, and Saturn with its restrictions and hypervigilance, right? We've been in this period of hypervigilance since, since March of 2020, when this whole global pandemic was unleashed on the world. And, right on cue, as Leo season began there in July, we saw this just rash of protests breaking out around the world, right? And I was looking at, some of these images from Google, like, it was everywhere. It was in Paris, France, and we saw it in Australia. We saw it in Germany. We saw it in the UK. We saw it in parts of Latin America, and Cuba, and Colombia, Thailand, in parts of Asia, in Iran, Tunisia, right? There was just this massive uprising of people protesting and just wanting their voices to be heard, of just a frustration at this Saturn in Aquarius limitations that have been placed on them. Of course, sort of the rallying cry of a lot of these protests was really in resistance to a lot of nation states considering implementing these vaccine passports. So you can't go out in public, you can't go to work, you can't go to restaurants unless you can prove that you've been vaccinated. And not to politicize the vaccination issue, it's already highly politicized enough, but I think it's helpful to see what this astrological weather is indicating here, and why these issues are coming up for us at this time, right? When we can see the planetary configurations, it makes a lot of sense that this kind of swell of energy would be present during this particular Leo season, right, with that configuration, that Saturn and Uranus trying to make its way into the picture. So I thought that was interesting. And something I think is worth noting, and maybe a little project as we move into Virgo season, right? Because Virgo is really, let's just talk about the shift from Leo to Virgo, as we like to do as we consider what's going on here seasonally. Why we talk about these astrological seasons as the sun moves through each of the 12 signs of the zodiac, and which marks our solar year. So we're moving from a fixed fire sign in Leo, right, the peak of summer, and now we're mutating into the mutable earth sign of Virgo. So this will be the last phase of the summer cycle. So all that energy, all that fire, all that passion that was harnessed and expressed, especially with Mercury going through there, right, during Leo season, now has to be sort of contained and reevaluated and reassessed and assimilated in a way, in a very Virgo way, practical, earthy, meticulous, the details, right? We always say with Virgo, the devil's in the details. And so we're making this shift, this seasonal shift, and we'll look at the charts and see what it is specifically that we get with some configurations and the aspects that are going to give a particular character to this particular Virgo season. We had that mystical rectangle in the sky during Leo season last month, where we have another really interesting configuration again here during Virgo season. I call the diamond shape, and we'll take a look at what that's about. But I was just suggesting this project as we move into Virgo season, because it is all about, it's ruled by Mercury, but differently than, its rulership of Gemini in an air sign where it's really about the communication. Here in Virgo and in Earth, Mercury is really calling us to really dig deeper into the data sets, right? The earthy part of the information. Like, what is the information? Where is it coming from? A lot of interest in data and statistics, which is a big subject right now that we're dealing with in terms of getting a lot of information presented to us through the media about all of the situations we're having with the coronavirus and the Delta variant and the vaccination versus the anti-vaccination, and statistics about, economics and the stimulus plans and all sorts of things. So really a good time to hone our skills of discernment. Really start to look at, where is our information coming from? Where are you sourcing your sense making? Are you relying on traditional media? Do you rely on your local paper or the New York Times? Are you relying on CNN or one of the major networks? Maybe you fall on the political divide on the Fox side or on the MSNBC side. Regardless, this is sort of a meta-political perspective, I think, that Virgo calls us to take. And that's to really consider what it is that we're getting. Why is that information being presented as it is? Who's presenting it? What agenda does it serve? Really learn to read between the lines about what's going on. I do this all the time as a matter of course, and I found it very interesting as all of these protests were breaking out around the world in all these different countries. And, I read here in LA, I get the LA Sunday Times delivered, mostly for the crossword that we like to do together. But I do just read through the main section of the paper just to see what is the narrative, right? Because it really is a narrative that's being presented by mainstream media. And the narrative about this was like, these were far-right protests around the world. And there was no nuance to it at all. It was just, I don't want to say dismissed, but of course, the LA Times has I would say, a left-leaning bias. I think they would admit that themselves. And so it immediately polarized and politicized this as being of one sort or another. This was a far-right leaning protests around the world. And I think that's very interesting, because I presume that not every one of these millions of people who came out in protest during the Leo season were all far-right politically. I'm sure you had an incredible range of souls expressing themselves and their dissatisfaction with the state of the world and the way their local and state and national governments have been handling things, the way everything has really unfolded and sort of come apart at the seams in a way, right? I think we're seeing a lot of resistance to a lot of the institutional assumptions that we've made for the last 100 years. And we've talked about this a lot with Pluto and Capricorn. We are in this era of massive institutional transformation. The old ways of doing business as usual will not work anymore. We are being forced to find new structures to build the framework for the new future we're moving into. It just has to be done. And it's very interesting. We'll talk about this in the next few months as 2022 approaches, because the United States is about to have its Pluto return. When the U.S. was founded, when we signed the Declaration of Independence back in 1776, Pluto was in the late degrees of Capricorn. And this is a 248-year cycle that's coming back around. So Pluto is about to come back to the position where it was when America was founded. This portends to be a rather massive, significant event that will have impact over the course of about a year to 18 months around the exactitude of that transit. So this is really going, we're just in the beginning of the big shift that's occurring in terms of our institutions, in terms of this Pluto Capricorn. Pluto in Capricorn, not so prevalent in this month's forecast, but some of the other planets are. So without further ado, let's just jump in and take a look at the current sky here. I'm going to bring up. All right, so, we're going to have a kickoff to Virgo season will be on August 22nd. But right before we officially start Virgo season, we're going to have a pretty grand ending to this Leo season, which has been really powerful, I think. I felt it personally. I'd be curious to hear of you folks out there how this last month has been for you. I've found it very stimulating in creativity and expression, and there's just been an energy that has been palpable. So we're ending Leo season 2021 with a full moon in Aquarius. Second full moon of the month, because we had the last one at, I think was at 1 degree Aquarius, and now here we are at the 29th degree of Leo Aquarius and getting this full moon. This time around, we've got a conjunction. The moon is conjunct Jupiter here, retrograde Jupiter moving its way back into Aquarius. So this is a big full moon. Anytime Jupiter's involved, it just expands everything that it comes into contact with. So you already have the fullness of a full moon in Aquarius. Now we've got it combining this retrograde Jupiter. I think it's interesting. We witnessed Jupiter move really rapidly through Aquarius throughout all of most of 2021, almost in lockstep with the release of the vaccines worldwide. This big Aquarian energy, right? Very cutting edge scientific discovery and implementation. Massive program to try to get vaccines distributed worldwide, globally, right? There's a very Jupiter and Aquarius type of symbolism, and it was all happening really fast. Then, Jupiter went into Pisces and everything slowed down, and now it's been retrograding back through some of these later degrees of Aquarius. So I think there's a lot of reversal and a lot of revision and going back over some of that really exuberant, expansive, frontier-breaking, scientific, a lot of the science now is being picked apart. I think for good reason. I think it's worth really getting this stuff right. There's the consequences are really high. And so my guess is that, something may come to light around all of this under this full moon. There's this sense of illuminating some big insight, having gone back over some of the details, the data, right? We've also have Saturn moving retrograde. Just 2 days before here on the 20th, we have Uranus moving retrograde. So now at this point, we are full into retrograde season. We've got all the outer planets moving retrograde, right? So Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto all moving backwards, all through one sort of side of the zodiac, one side of the sky, where most of our inner planets over here on the other half, right? So there's this, that's what happens during these retrograde seasons when the sun's on the other side of the earth. That's what causes that retrogradation to occur. So there's a lot of oppositional energy, right, coming. Now we've got the big picture. All of the outer planets are in the bigger social signs during this time, this period, which is why this has been such a huge sort of cultural shifts that have taken place over the last 10 or 15 years. It's part of what's going on here astrologically. And so we can start to understand this symbolism and some of these aspects. What is it getting triggered? What is the universe asking us to work with in terms of these archetypes so that we can actually negotiate these things in a much more conscious, aware, enlightened, and intelligent way, rather than letting things just happen to us and accepting our fate. There's not a really good course of action. So here we have it. Something else that I've been talking about here, and I sort of tease this a little bit, is a new configuration here going on. So we have on this full moon, which is already got Jupiter taking place with the moon here, but we also have a grand air trine. We've got Venus, which just has moved into its own sign of Libra within the last week or so. Really empowering. Whenever Venus is moving through Libra, it's really strong, right? It has this it brings its sense of aesthetics and beauty and harmony and relationship and fairness and equality, right? All moving through that Libra quality that Venus brings. So this is a really nice configuration, because now we've got it trining with that Saturn in Aquarius, and we've got the North Node in Gemini. So here's this grand air trine. Of course, we've been talking about the nodal axis a lot in 2021. It really has figured prominently in a lot of these big configurations. We're really getting a message about shifting to the future. We are getting the opportunity to really retrieve the wisdom of the past, right? South Node, Sagittarius. Let's really go back and find good signal from history, from our personal history, from our collective history, from our cultural history, because we need that wisdom in order to find our direction forward as we move into North Node, Gemini. We are really trying to figure out what this future looks like and talks like and sounds like, right? How it works, how it functions, how we navigate and negotiate through this new world we're creating together. So where do we get the diamond? Well, the diamond comes now, if you see, because of this sextile here between both Venus and Saturn with the South Node, you get this, what I call a diamond pattern, right? So this is all really harmonious aspects between all of these planets, which to me really says we really now can really get this South Node Sag hooked up into this diamond pattern, right? It's really calling us to connect this aesthetic, the beauty, the harmony. Like, let's really get it together, people. Let's really take care of each other. What's the highest good, right? Where is the fairness? Where is the equality? Where is the justice, right? Harmonizing and synchronizing with this Saturn in Aquarius, right? All of this that we've been dealing with, these restrictions, these limits, this suffering and setbacks and loss within Aquarius, within what's supposed to be this new era that we're moving into, the future, right? The grand paradigm shift that we've all been anticipating and want to participate in seems to be taking shape as more of a dystopian future than anything that the hippies of the 60s that were dancing around Woodstock would have predicted. So there's something really magical, though, in this configuration that is going to allow us to really tap into this great resource of our history, of our spiritual, philosophical, cosmological, religious traditions, wisdom, deep wisdom. South Node, we've been getting it for this whole year. And I think I see it a lot. I myself, and maybe you too, like, we're going back through history. It's like, where are the good analogs for what we're experiencing, this massive shift that's going on in our culture right now, this like civilization level crisis that we're in. People talk about this meaning crisis. And so we're looking back to earlier periods, right? We're looking back to like ancient Greece and the Hellenistic era and ancient Rome. We're looking back to the medieval period and the shift to the Renaissance and Age of Enlightenment and all. Like, okay, what wisdom is there that we need to retrieve? And what mistakes have we made along the way that need to be obsolesced? That's really what we're doing here in this period. So I feel like this configuration is going to help us get to this Gemini North Node future. What's it all about? How do we build the new society intellectually? What is the new ideas that need to be brought into creation, that need to be formulated, that need to be shared, that need to be articulated, right? Because starting in 2022, these nodes are going to shift back into Taurus and Scorpio. And so it's going to be really time to build the new thing. But if we don't have the vision and the good ideas, if we're not communicating what needs to be done, we're not going to be able to build something useful. That's why this process, this nodal axis that is this 18-year cycle that it forces us to really consider is so important. And it's really been strongly configured all year, 2021. So I've been hammering on it. You're probably sick of hearing about it, but it really is. Along with this Saturn-Uranus square, it's really, to me, the signature configuration of this entire year. So that's exciting, and something that, this is, really teeing off now what we can expect from Virgo season, because on the very next day, we'll see the sun ingresses into the sign of Virgo. We see that we got Mars and Mercury conjunct in the sign of Virgo. So this is a pretty powerful, empowered sense too. So we've got Venus in her own sign, and we've got Mercury in its own sign, right? Mercury in Virgo, really well positioned for Mercury to do its Virgo type of stuff, right? What I talked about. It's like really getting into the nitty gritty, the details, parsing the data, really figuring out what's going on. Lots of very practical discrimination, criticism, right? But all with the motivation for improvement, right? Virgo as an archetype gets a bad rep, I think. We talk about Virgos as being very critical and nitpicking, and they're always on you. Well, they're doing it for a reason. If you're working with a Virgo archetype in your personality, it means you have this incredible desire for improvement. You tend to find fault and see the flaws because you've got this very accurate and powerful critical facility by virtue of Mercury's rulership of this Earth sign. So it really wants to get it right, because it wants to be of service, right? Virgo is a very humble and service-oriented archetype. It wants to improve, it wants to share its knowledge and understanding so it can help people and help situations and help the society and help the environment. It's very focused on work, vocation, right? We find with Virgo really master craftsmen and craftswomen, people who really master their craft, often have that Virgo aspect somewhere in their chart, right? We talk about having to, put in your 10,000 hours in order to master anything. Well, that's using our Virgo. That's where we put in our 10,000 hours. We put our Virgo to work. And so, this month we're giving the opportunity then to use that skill set, put that Virgo discipline and detail-oriented functionality to work. Really figure out what it is that we need to learn and know, and shift the data and the perspective and the understanding, share that information. Mercury always wants to distribute it, right? Remember, we're in a mutable sign too, right? So how are we trying to shift what we learned, right, through that creative self-expression that we've been experiencing during Leo season, and now how do we share it? How do we disseminate it? How do we sort it? How do we package it in a way that's useful, that's practical? We really are going to be called to be putting ourselves to good use during this period. Now, we're getting something interesting here, which is an opposition from this very practical, Mars-Mercury conjunction in the sign of Virgo is going to be in opposition to this very dreamy Neptune in Pisces. So sort of like, here's a chance. I see this as like downloading a more spiritual and cosmically inspired information. It's like downloading the data from the Akashic records into our more earthly computational capacities, right? This is a really big connection. If we're able to source information from a higher dimension, a higher level, right? Could get a lot of very inspired dreams may come during this period, right? Because now the mental function is contacting this this cosmic realm of Neptune and Pisces. And if we can pull some of that dream into the reality, that would be a super good use of this configuration. Of course, the shadow side is always a possibility where we could become deluded or delusional. We're lost in the fantasy. We see in the details what we want to believe, what we want to be true. There's been a lot of that going on through this whole period of Neptune and Pisces that began for us back in 2012. So, this is always an annual sort of check-in with this perspective, right? So we get these oppositions are really good chances to fuse and to synergize, and usually get resolved through relationships. So this is something to really be aware of this month. Communication within relationships is going to be vital. There's going to be a lot of need to just talk through the details of what needs doing, but also a desire to really dream big, look at the big picture, and see if we can integrate that. Can we pull some of those inspirations into the daily routine? Can we spiritualize the daily, right? I'm going to have that sense here because we've got all of this energy now. This is really going to be the focus of the entire month, is this section of the chart. And obviously we're always thinking about, well, where does this work in my personal chart, right? I know for me, I have Virgo on the 10th house, so I'm always relating this back to my career, right? How am I presenting the data, the information, the Virgo? How am I helping be of service through, well, it's doing this, right? It's doing these videos, writing articles, sharing information about astrology is how I do my Virgo. And so I'm super active. I'll be probably incredibly active over the course of this Virgo season, writing projects and doing a lot of videos and such. So I invite you, and this is why it's important to know your own chart. Where is that Virgo falling for you? Because that's where you're going to get this energy. And of course, in the opposite sign is where your Pisces is going to be, and so that's where the dream world is being stimulated for you. Just something to keep an eye on. So we'll just kind of cruise through the rest of the month here and see. So it's off to a really potent start for this Virgo season, right? With that full moon in Aquarius, and then this grand air trine with this diamond reinforcement to it. I really see that as being a key configuration throughout this whole month. And something interesting, which we're going to see, is that right now we have, it's really being triggered by Venus moving through this, 8th degree of Libra. But later in the month, as we'll see, Mercury is going to come in and also fill that position. So we'll get this diamond configuration triggered yet again. Only the second time it will be with a Mercury theme. So where Venus is bringing in that really sensual, aesthetic, relational harmony, sort of paving the way for how we can activate this diamond configuration. Well, when Mercury comes in there through Libra, well, now it's really going to be much more focused on a more practical expression of these potentials. Like, what do we say? What do we do? How do we communicate? How do we share the ideas about, retrieving this information from the past, from the South Node? How do we build the better society that Saturn in Aquarius is trying to figure out, even though it's going back and forth and really begrudgingly, right? A lot of the old institutions and the societal ways of being don't really want to change. A lot of it is like, let's go back to the way things were. So there's this resistance that we get with Saturn moving through Aquarius, and it's going to take a lot of work and effort in order to move that needle forward. And I think we'll see how that configuration plays out. And this should be an interesting month, within the culture, within societies. A lot of information is likely to be revealed during this month. It's just conducive to that kind of, let's say, exposure. We see, the sun as it moves into these early degrees of Virgo is forming a T-square with the nodal axis. Again, we're just constantly getting this opportunity to really set our compass. Where are we coming from? Where are we headed? Sagittarius into Gemini. Retrieve the old, pull the gifts forward, build the new thing. So with that sun in Virgo, like really practical, useful information we have access to it. We need to tap it in, find the resources, and put them into useful, practical, good use. As we continue moving through the month here, just looking for the next big configuration. That Saturn has been, this has been the reason why the nodal axis has been so important all years, because Saturn is in this dance with the axis as it's moved forward and retrograded, and it will continue to aspect the nodal axis. So here we got this interesting thing where we've got the sun squaring it, and we've got Saturn forming this sextile and trine, respectively. So, man, we're just being called to really figure out where the hell we're going. Where are we headed? Where do we want to be? Individually, in our relationships, in our communities, as a society, as a culture, where are we headed? And this month is giving us a lot of opportunity here. We'll see. I wanted to show you how, if we keep moving forward, we'll see how once Mercury moves into these early degrees of Libra, it now is taking the place of Venus and holding that point to create that diamond energy. So again, this air trine, this Libra energy, and this is all paving the way for Libra season, which is going to come next month, right, as we initiate fall. A lot of information, a lot of relationship energy, it's a major shift, right? We're changing seasonal cycles, and we'll see that when we get Mars and the Sun now triggering this diamond configuration during Libra season, that's probably really where the energized opportunities and potentials will really be actualized. So we're getting the Venusian coming through first, the Mercury, we're articulating it, we're getting the ideas of it, and then come Libra season, boy, we're going to get an opportunity to really activate this stuff. And you're just going to see it play out. We're all tuning into it, that frequency, and it'll be interesting to see how that coalesces and coheres in resonance as it echoes through the culture at large. Always fascinating. So, we're now moving into the early days of September. We're going to see the sun's going to come into a nice trine with old Uranus over here, this nice Earth trine. Some real practical inspirations, right? This whole time with the sun, like we're really being called to really dig into there's a sense of embodiment with Virgo, which I always like to think about, right? Because it's Earth sign. And so it really rules the Earth, Virgo. It's all about environmentalism. It's about healing ourselves, being in harmony with the planet, being one with, a healthy daily, day-to-day work routine, a healthy diet, a healthy exercise program. So always, Virgo season, always every year, a great time to really take a good look at our diet and exercise routine. Is there something we can change? Is there something we can innovate here? And with this configuration here from Uranus and Taurus, I think certainly an opportunity for some new revolutionary insight or inspiration into how we do our day-to-day work life, and invigorating our sense of health and our sense of connection to the earth, right? That Taurus earth sign with Virgo combining energies, really getting a sense of a revaluing of our connection to the earth, our connection to food. Taurus rules food, it rules the food supply. We've talked about this a lot. I mean, this Uranus and Taurus has this disruptive energy. It's a sign of literally shaking the earth, right? So earthquakes and volcanoes and seismic activities on a very physical dimension, but also, metaphorical earthquakes, just shaking up our perception of the world, our relationship to the environment, to nature. I think we're being called to really reevaluate our impact on the earth as a species, as a civilization. Again, with all of this Pluto and Capricorn, I think the whole concept of capitalism is being put to the ultimate test. And it's not the way forward. We clearly need a revised capitalism in order to survive, because it's based on this presumption. If we go back all the way, we're talking about going back to the 1700s and the founding of the American experiment, right? Like Adam Smith, the first guy writing about capitalism. The assumption is that capitalism functions based on an endless supply of source material. Well, we don't have an endless supply of source material. We're running out of fuels. We're running out of good topsoil. We're running out of clean water. We're running out of fresh air. So we are in a closed system, and we need a economic system that recognizes that. It's all part of all these revolutionary changes that we're witnessing with all of these outer planets moving through the extra-personal signs. So anyway, that's a bit of a tangent about this nice trine, though, between the Sun and Aquarius. We're this very innovative kind of configuration. How can we really innovate our sense of how we fit into the world? Let's just keep moving forward and see what else pops up for us. Getting a lot of this, as we've talked about, we've got groups of planets on two sides of the zodiac, all the personal planets. So we're getting a lot of oppositional energy. And as we're shifting in, we're starting to get some of this trine energy too. As we move in towards Libra, we can see where it's starting to trine more of these Aquarius positions. So, as we move through the month, we see Venus moving fairly quickly through that sign of Libra, and makes this, a couple of aspects here. It's trining Jupiter, but also it's coming into a square with Pluto. So this is an interesting, configuration. We didn't talk much about Pluto. It's also getting trined with Mars here. So Pluto's starting to make some aspects here, aspecting both Venus and Mars at the same time. So a real sense of a revaluing of this whole sort of collective structural world that we are kind of watching transform before our very eyes. The old institutions and structures sort of breaking down. This is across the board. Again, we've been talking about this since last year, right? Where it's, the economic system, the political systems, the educational systems, the communication systems, all the big institutional structures are being transformed, right? And then there's this double-edged sword to Pluto, because it also is power. So Pluto in Capricorn is to me, it's the symbol of the plutocracy. And I've talked about this recently quite a bit, where it's like we don't get a condition where we have like the 10 wealthiest people on the planet whose net worth is collectively more than the other 99%. Like, that disparity of wealth really only can happen during this Pluto and Capricorn period. Now, it's unsustainable, right? And I think what we're going to witness over the next couple years is some sort of massive transformation in all of those systems. The financial system and the economic system will certainly be front and center in this transformative energy. But so what happens here, though, when we've got this retrograde Pluto squaring Venus and trining Mars? Well, whenever Pluto and Mars get together, they're kind of birds of a feather, right? Mars is a very, we say that Pluto is the higher octave of Mars, right? It's where Mars is the active expression, that conscious energy. Pluto's the unconscious power. So this is a symbol of power plays, power moves. Something, people who have power are going to be empowered. And we can expect it to play out in very earthy, practical ways, whether it's the power to control information, the power to present data in a certain way, right? Mars in Virgo, something just to be really aware of as it plays out. And of course, these power dynamics play out interpersonally for us all too. We're all going to have this. There could be power struggles, right? And with it squaring Venus, that sense of connection, that sense of relationship could be transformed. This works both ways. Can Venus soften some of this transformational energy, some of this Plutonian urge, this power, very very sexual energy too, if we think about this with these three planets being configured like this. Pluto it's a very unconscious, potent, subterranean energy. Very sexualized. Remember, it rules Scorpio. So you think about that Scorpio energy, always associate that with Pluto. Bring in Mars, right, with its, rather potent energy. And Venus, the love, the sensuality. So, just, around that first week of September, those types of energies are certainly in play. And we've got this, look at this kind of interesting gang of sextiles, right? With the moon coming in here. Oop, wrong tool here. Let's try that again. This to this to this. It's kind of an interesting configuration with all of these positions in that 60-degree aspect to each other. Again, a lot of harmony. So different, despite having a lot of oppositional energy, there seems to be a lot of nice, harmonious aspects that are presenting themselves during the course of this month. So something to really take a leverage in. These are all fire and earth signs that are together. So it's a lot of levitational energy. When we think about the elements fire and earth, or fire and air, I should say, both have that upward levitational. They're masculine, they're outward, projective, right? You've got fire, the passion, the expression, the inspiration, right? Fueled by the air, the ideas, the communication, the expression. So all of these planets, we've got Moon in Leo, we've got Libra with Venus, we've got Sagittarius fire, the south node, we've got Aquarius and air with Saturn, and then we've got Chiron and Aries, more fire. So ways in which we can sort of connect all the dots literally here and harness this just very buoyant energy being configured. I want to just wrap up. We're already getting pretty deep into the presentation here, but the last thing is going to be the new moon, which, if I can dial it in here, I think it's about 14, 15 degrees. Yeah, 14 degrees of Virgo. We'll get the Virgo new moon in a wide conjunction with Mars, but this is, always a time to set a new intention. And we start another lunation, another lunar cycle. So anything to do with all things Virgo during this time is super great to focus on, right? So great time. We're talking about September 6th here. Set the new intention for a new routine, a new diet, a new health program, incorporating something more grounded and practical into your life, a meditation practice, some mindfulness that also is embodied. We want to try to get that Mercury mind into the physical, into the body. Really a good time for embodied practices. And I think in general, that's always good advice. I advise everyone to try to have something that gets them grounded, because we are very much out of our bodies, particularly during this time when we're spending so much time interacting with each other digitally or electronically. There's this disembodied sense that we have, so it's really helpful to ground. I strongly encourage it. If you don't have some sort of practice, take this opportunity this month to go and do some research and find something that works for you, because you'll find that it's really going to serve you well. Yeah, let's just leave it there. I think that's a good stopping point for our exploration of this Virgo season 2021. So hopefully that'll help you sort of make a plan for the month ahead. We got a sense of the astrological weather now, so we know whether do we need an emotional umbrella. It sounds like we're going to need more to bring more of our mental capacities to the fore. Discrimination, I think, is one of the key themes for the month whenever we're dealing with Virgo energy. So hope that's been helpful for you guys out there. Appreciate the time you spent to share this information and learn with me. I value your time and your attention. As always, if you're finding the information I present here helpful, I'd appreciate it if you can just subscribe to the channel. It just helps me sort of grow what I'm trying to do here. If you like this presentation, hit the like button, and always that notification bell too, so you know when I release new videos on the channel. All right, well, until next time, happy Virgo season, everyone. Sat Nam.